Okay, so this is my attempt at trying to walk you through how to analyze these data or clean these data so that we can get them into a form that we can analyze, and we are calculating the social jet lag. So I have these data set up. I'm doing Monday, and I have them set up so that the file should look just like yours. So I have Sunday sleep on the left and then Monday wake on the right. And so all the columns should be the same. So you just want to remember when you're analyzing your own data that you just want to substitute whatever day that you are analyzing, right, and the night before in place of Sunday and Monday. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work with all the sleep data and get that into shape. And the sleep data, remember, we don't care if it is an obligation or a free day. It doesn't matter if Sunday was an obligation or a free day in terms of when they go to sleep. So we're going to try to put all of the data in column B and column D into one column. And so the way that we're going to do that is we are going to insert a blank column to the right of column E. So this is column F. And then we're just going to use a sum formula to add this square and this cell so that the final column has either one in it. So the formula is in the worksheet I gave you, or you can just type in the first cell of column F equals sum, and then highlight B2 because that's the first cell in B, and say plus D2. And that's between parentheses always, and push return, and then it will try to autofill. I've noticed that it will tell me zeros for some of these. I'm not sure why, but then when I click check, it actually fills them in with the correct value. So that should be good. And you should scroll through just to make sure that you are getting the same values. And then you'll notice here that there is a pound value. So you do want to be on the lookout. And I think the most consistent way to do this is to filter for column F, create a filter, and just look to see if there's any of those. So right now we don't need to fix the 9 to 11 or the missing colon. Just click the value because that will be a problem. Did not filter. Hold on. Sorry. This is what I meant to do. Because that will be a problem because it's affected by the formula here. And it doesn't, it won't, once we freeze the column, we won't be able to change that value. Everything else we can change, but this one, because it's depending on this value here, we can't change. So we have decided that we would do, if they did a slash like that, we would just do the average. So you can replace this with 1245, and that will fix that formula there. And then you can clear that filter by selecting all. Okay. And so then the last thing we want to do is we want to freeze this because remember it's depending on these columns right now. And just for simplicity and to make the file look cleaner, we want to delete B and D. And so if we delete B and D, then these numbers will go away too. So you freeze it by copying F and then just paste value, or sorry, paste special values only. And then that will paste the values. And now we can delete column B. And what was, I think, column D, but is now column C, and not affect column what is now D. And now you can rename that Sunday sleep. And now I just want to do the same thing with the AM PM data to get those into one column. So insert a column to the right of D. And you'll use that same sum formula. So equals sum, and click B2 plus C2. And this has done all 0, 0. It must have thought it was a time column. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to format and go to number, and that should fix that and turn it into a 2. And you can pull that down. And if it really bothers you that it turned it into decimal places, you can go to format and you can go to custom number format and tell it, I just want a number with no decimal places, and that will make it look consistent. And then you can just copy this label, right? 1 a.m. 2 p.m. into there. And again, this is a formula, so we want to make sure to freeze it by copying and then just paste special values only. So these are now all values, and just, double check to make sure you got them in the right columns. And then you can delete B and C. All right, and so now you have your sleep times. So now what we want to do is we want to clean your sleep times because eventually we're going to have to put them into fraction format, and they need to be cleaned up before we can put them into fraction format. So the first thing I would do is I would filter column B, and I would clear the filter, and I would just look for anything that needs to be fixed. Right. So we want to change anything that they put in 24 hours. We want to put that back on the 12-hour scale just to keep that consistent. This is missing a colon. This is missing a colon. And this one, we're going to do the average between 9 and 11. That's a big range. So we'll say OK. And then just fix. So 9 to 11, again, the average is 10. So we'll just do 10, 30, 11, 1, and 11. Okay. And then you can clear the filter by selecting all. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to check to make sure that their AMs and their PMs are okay. So I would do this in 2 steps. You could look at all of the data together, but I think that the majority of the cases are going to be, the mistakes are going to be when they say 12 p.m. So I would do those first, and then I would look at the other values. And so I think the easiest way to do this is first to sort column B, or sorry, to filter column B and to clear your filters, and to go through and just to choose anything that starts with a 12, just to get all the 12s out, and make sure too to check the single number 12s as well. So we filtered down to get all of our 12s. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sort so that we can separate out the AMs and the PMs, right? Because 12 a.m. makes a decent amount of sense for somebody to go to bed. 12 p.m. is, we want to check on those a little bit more carefully. So remember to sort is you highlight all your data, and always highlight all your data. Sometimes when I'm paranoid, I just go all the way out. Because we don't want to get into a situation where we sort some of these columns and not other columns, because all participants, right, have all data on the same row. And so once you sort only some of your data, you're starting to separate out your participants. So go to data, go to sort range, go to advanced range sorting options. You're going to tell it has header rows, and you are going to sort by column C, which is the 1 equals AM and the 2 equals PM, the first one of those. And so choose that, say sort. And so now we have all of our 12 AMs. And so you just want to go through and just make sure, right? Like it's fairly typical. Go to bed at 12, get up at 10. That's not super surprising. Get up at 6, get up at 8, get up at 9, get up at 7. Don't worry, we'll come back and fix these like 8:30/9 later. So anything where they're going to bed at 12 a.m., this all seems fairly straightforward. 12 to 5:30 is sad, but it happens. Okay. The more concerning ones are where they say they go to bed at 12 p.m. And we just want to make sure that they don't actually mean 12 a.m. And the way that you can sort of interpret this and make a decision in the context of their wake times is to ask, right, like, does it make sense? And we want to be careful about not to make too many judgments about people's sleep behavior. But for example, this person is saying that they went to bed at 12:30 p.m. And that they got up at 8:30 a.m. So that's almost 24 hours of sleep. And that's quite a bit, right? So it doesn't really make sense. They're basically sleeping through that midnight, right? 12 p.m., they're getting up at 6 a.m., they're getting up at 7. So like if they went to bed at 12 p.m., I would expect them to get up at either 8 p.m. or 6 a.m. And it's possible, like this is where there's danger. it's possible that they get up at 12 p.m., right? And they they go to sleep at 12 p.m. and maybe they mistake this one, right? And they get up at 8:30 p.m. and that's 8 hours of sleep. But A, I think it's more likely that they made this. And B, even if that's true, if we change the wrong AM PM, the difference there is still going to be the same, right? And so that's really what we care about, is the difference. And so what we're going to do, I think, for all of these, because I think they're doing the same thing in all of these, is we're first going to turn these red to indicate that we are making a change to them, right? So we are physically changing somebody's data. We want to keep a record of that so that if anybody ever asks us, we can go back and we can quickly identify, right, where we did this and how it might influence the findings that we got. And so once we change that red, then we can go and we can change this to ones, and that would make a lot more sense, right? That they're like going to bed at 12:30 a.m. and getting up at 8:30 a.m. Okay. So now we can clear our filter for B and say, okay. And then I think what it makes sense to do is we want to look at the other numbers just to make sure. I think it's less likely, but it's still possible that they made the AM PM mistake as well. So now let's filter C. By first looking at all of the AMs. So when they said they went to bed after midnight. And then what I'm going to do, just to make this easier to go through, is I'm going to sort again. So highlight all my data, go to data sort, go to advanced range sorting options, tell it that it has rows, and I'm going to sort by column B, which is the Sunday sleep, because what that's going to do is that's going to put it into all the similar numbers, which then makes it just a lot easier for us to go through, right? And say, like, does it make sense that they went to sleep at 1 a.m.? Yep, probably it does make sense that they went to sleep at 1 a.m. And just to check quickly again, right? Yep, 8 a.m., 11 a.m. That, I mean, it sucks, but it happens. 9, just to see if there's anything sort of weird looking, right? So this person said they went to sleep at 1 a.m., but they said they woke up at noon. So that seems totally plausible. Okay, so I'm not super concerned about the 1 a.m.s. Oh, we are in 12. Sorry, we went into 12. We already looked at 12. We could have filtered out 12 if you're really ambitious. You can do that. Actually, I'm not sure you can do that because Google Sheets doesn't let you put on 2 filters, which is dumb. But anyway, so we can just skip through 12 because we already looked at all the 12s, and we're back to 1 a.m. now. And so 1, but we get up at noon again. That makes sense. 1. Okay, so the ones where they're saying they get up in the PM, like this person said they went to bed at 1 a.m., but they're getting up at 10:30 p.m. That is, oh no, they said AM. Never mind. Just kidding. Moving on. Okay, so basically I'm just scanning to see, like, are we seeing PMs? And this one, like, they went to bed at 1 a.m., but they got up at 4 p.m. It's pretty long, but I buy it. A lot of people went to bed at 1 a.m. All right, the 2 a.m.s. They went to bed at 3 a.m. This is getting real late, right? So like the more kind of surprising it is, like, ooh, 3 a.m. is really early in the morning to be going to bed. The more you want to pay attention, just to be like, okay, but they're sleeping until 10 a.m. They're sleeping until 11 a.m. So that makes sense. The 4 a.m. they're sleeping. Yeah, oh, that's awful. They're sleeping until noon. They're sleeping until noon. That makes sense. And like, clearly we're going to miss some of these things. You know, that's where random error, and that's where having a big sample size comes in handy, right? Like, not all of these, if they made a mistake and we missed it, it's, you know, we're going to have that variability, but we're just trying to be as careful as possible. So they went to bed at 5 a.m. And they got up at noon. I buy that. They went to bed at 5 a.m. and they got up at 6:30. That's sad. But I think again, that could be plausible. Like I'm more willing to believe that somebody slept only an hour than somebody sleeps like 22 hours. 5 a.m. They got up at 1 p.m. That makes sense. Okay, so now they're starting to say, I went to bed at 7 a.m. and I got up at 2:30 p.m. I still buy that. They went to bed at 8 a.m., but they're getting up at 4, I buy that. Okay, so then these 11s here. So they're saying they went to bed at 11 a.m., but then they're getting up at 9 a.m. So this one I'm pretty confident, right? We can change, again, I'm going to make it red and change it to a PM because going to bed at 11 a.m. and then getting up at 9 a.m. the next, again, like 22 hours later, I don't really buy. And then going to bed at 11 a.m. and getting up at 8 a.m. the same. So I'm going to change those ones. Okay. All right. So I believe that I have filtered and checked everything. Okay, no, there's one more. So then I want to do the same thing when they said they went to bed in the PM. PM is a little bit, you would expect them to go to bed in the PM, so I'm not too concerned about these data. So I filtered column C for 2, and then I'm going to highlight again. I'm going to go to data sort range, advanced range options, tell it has a header row, sort by column B, Sunday sleep. Just to again, make sure it makes sense, right? They are going to bed at 8:30. They're getting up in the morning. They're going to bed at 9-ish. They're getting up in the morning. They're going to bed at 10. They're getting up in the morning. They're going to bed at 10:45. They're getting up in the morning. Going to bed at 11. Getting up in the morning. Going to bed at 8. 9, 10, 11, and we've already checked all the 12. So, all right. So I don't see any issues that are jumping out like super much there. So I guess where I would be concerned is if somebody said like, oh, I'm going to bed at 2 p.m. Right. I would just check that. Just, again, if they're going to bed at 2 p.m., but they're waking up at midnight, sure. It's just like if they meant 2 a.m., then we just want to check on that. All right, so now we can undo this filter. We can say select all, and I just want to sort it back. It's probably not the biggest deal, but just for like the way that the data look, I'm just going to sort it back to participant, which is how we started. So go to data, sort range, advanced range sortings. The data has header rows and by participant. Okay. So we will oh no, we're still working. We're still working with the sleep data here. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to change our sleep data from time into a fraction. So the way we're going to do that is we are going to filter column B for all of the ones that has a colon in it. So I think the easiest, because a lot of them do, is just to leave them checked and then to uncheck the single numbers. Okay. And the reason we have to sort out or filter out the colon from the single numbers is because if you try to change the single numbers using the formula I'm about to use, it turns it into a 0. And so we need to do those separately. So now what we're going to do is we are going to insert a column to the right of column B or the left of column C. So this is new column C. And we're going to copy and paste or type in this formula here. So the equals hour A1. So this is just turning the hours and minutes into a fraction. It's basically just turning the minute part into a fraction. And because we don't have an A1, right, or A1 as participant, it can't do this. So we need to change this into what this cell is. So it's B2. So change all A1s into B2. And it is autofilling. So I think you can say, okay. And then these look kind of weird, like 1130 is rounded up to 12. I think that's because we don't have the decimals set on this column. So we just want to format it. So if it ever looks kind of weird when you first do the formula, try to format it. This time put it into number. There we go. And now it looks right. It was rounding up because we had told it that we only wanted no decimals in this column. So we needed to fix that. All right. So this is to the end of the column. And so now we can remove that filter. Okay. So now we're going to sort all of this by column B. So choose all your data, sort range, advanced, header, and we're going to sort by column B, which is Sunday sleep. We're just trying to sort the ones with a colon away from the ones that are single so that we can then copy and paste those. So that now they're just all in one column. And all right, we're going to name this column Sunday sleep trans for it's transformed. And we are going to, just want to make sure I had this on the instructions. We are going to copy this column C, and we're going to paste it back into column C, values only, to freeze that. And we're going to check one more time to make sure everything is good. Okay, so when we met on Thursday, I had suggested that we delete column B because I'm like, oh, we don't need it, but let's keep it. I think there is value to be able to check back quickly to look at the time part as opposed to be like, what was 1.67 before? So I'm going to keep that column, and I'm just going to call this Sunday sleep time versus Sunday sleep trans. And if you're super anal like me, you will center it. Oh, but now the other one's not centered. I always like my data center. Okay. All right. I believe for now we are done with these sleep times. So we can move on to the wake times. All right. And the wake times is we're going to do a lot of this the same way. The difference is we do want to make sure that we're keeping the Monday wake time for the obligation different than the free. But, and this is again different than what we talked about when we met on Thursday, I think we can still combine those columns to make the process more efficient. So we don't have to do this twice. We just need to make sure to keep this column E, which is telling us, right, which one is free and which one is obligation. But we're going to go through the exact same process that we did with the sleep times to put the wake times into a single column, or a very similar process. So what we are going to do is we are going to highlight again all of our data, and we're gonna now go to data, sort range, advanced. We're gonna sort by column E, which is whether it's free or obligation. So this is gonna keep our data separate. So it's 1 equals free, 2 equals observation, and sort. So this way we have just all of our free data on the top and all of our obligation data on the bottom. Okay, so then I think what we can do, this is actually easier. We don't have to do the sum because it's just easy because we've been able to sort in this way. So I think you can just copy H and I and just paste it into F and G like that. And that should be good. And then you can delete H and I. And then you can just rename column F Monday wake because it's all the wakes. And again, what's keeping us knowing whether it's for your obligation is this column here, right? Which is saying it's for your obligation. So that way we only have to go through this process once, whereas on Thursday, I was thinking that we would have to do it twice if we had kept those separated. Okay. So similar to the other one, we now want to clean and just make sure everything is looking good for the wake times. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to filter column F. Oh, that was bad. What did I just do? Oh, goodness. Okay. Don't do that. All right. We're going to filter column F. And again, we're just going to look for those, you know, the not good ones. So these all look fine. So we want to change this. These are the ones because we've been working with this data file that we've changed a billion times now. So 6.3, 8.3, and these ones where they didn't have the colon. And the one with the slash. Okay. So we will put our colon in. We will change 839 to 845. We will put our colon in. We will just say 8 there. 7, 540, 530. Okay. So the next thing that we will do is we now want to check those AM PMs and make sure that the wake time makes sense. So let's filter for anything that has a 12 because the 12s are the most likely mistakes. And we just want to pay special attention to those. And there's not that many 12s because this means that they're waking up, you know, around noon. But just to go back and to say, you know, does it make sense that they're waking up at noon? Well, yeah, they went to bed at 3 a.m. Okay, so this one says that they went to bed at noon. No, 12 a.m. Okay, and they woke up at 12 p.m. So that makes sense. They went to bed at 1 a.m. and they woke up at noon, 1 a.m. and they woke up at noon, 4 a.m., 5. So I think that those all make sense and we're good with those. Okay, so now we just want to look at the other times. So again, I think it makes the most sense to sort this time column G by AM PM. Or sorry, to filter by AM PM because then we're going to sort column F. Sorry if you can hear that ambulance, but I live on an ambulance route. Okay, so 1 is AM. And then we're going to sort all of our data by column F just to get it. Again, it's just really hard to be like 11 p.m. Is that right? Like it's just easier to go to sort range, do this, and sort by the last 1 a.m. p.m. and sort. No, I did that wrong. I'm so sorry. We're going to sort by F. So we're going to sort by Monday wake. I apologize. Okay. So this is saying that they woke at 3 a.m., right? So you just want to be like, that's really early to wake up. but they did go to bed at 9, so I buy it. They woke at 4, but they woke up, but they went to sleep at 9, 4:30 went to 9. 4:45 they woke up, but they went to bed at 11. 4:45 they went to bed at there 5 a.m., but they went to bed at 8:30. So this says they went to bed at 1 a.m. and they got up at 5 a.m. That sucks. But it happened. So I think that's plausible. They're going to bed in the PM, so that makes sense. They went to bed at midnight, got up at 5. This all makes sense. So I guess what I'm really, checking on is the ones where they said they went to bed in the AM, just to make sure. That makes sense. So, and now we're starting to get into the realm where it's like, yeah, makes sense that they got up at 6:30, 7 a.m. Totally makes sense. 7:15, 7:30, 8. Jealous. Now they're getting up at 10. And then we'll go back, right? Because it just sorts the single letters differently. So again, 3 a.m. is super early, but they went to bed at 11. So it's plausible. 4 a.m. is early. And they went to bed at 2 a.m., but it's plausible. 11 p.m., 5 a.m. And now we're back into the realm of, 6 a.m. makes sense, 7 a.m. makes sense, 8 a.m. makes sense, 9, 10, 11 a.m. makes sense. And especially because you can see a lot of these people are going to bed after midnight. So that makes sense. Okay, and then the final one is to do the filter of G by PM, because these are people who are waking up basically afternoon. So just to check on those people, make sure they're all doing okay. And then to sort the data. It has rows by F, which is the Monday wake time. And so these people got up at 2 p.m., but they said they went to bed at 7 a.m. So that makes sense. And I think at this point, we're kind of double checking because we did this with the people who were like, does that make sense? They went to bed at 7 a.m. But double checking is never bad. We've already looked at the ones that had the 12. They woke up at 1, but they went to bed at 5 a.m. They woke up at 2, but they went to bed at 4 a.m. They went to bed at 8. 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then we already checked the needs. Okay, so I think we have cleaned everything for our wake data. So now I'm going to clear that filter by selecting all. And again, just to put this back, we should organize this now just by the free and obligation, just because I think it makes sense to keep it organized in that way. So I would go to data, sort range, advanced range, data has header, and to sort by column E, which is 1 equals free, 2 equals obligation. Okay, so now all our free people are back on top and all of our obligation people are below. Okay. All right, so now we want to turn these wake times into arithmetic values, arithmetic values as well. So insert a blank column to the right of F here. And we're going to do that same formula. So we'll come back here. It's the one I already have highlighted, even though down here it's here in the instructions. Okay, so again, right, it says, but your A1 is a word, so I can't calculate something. So you need to tell it now that we want to start this with F2. Okay. And it looks like it's putting that into weird formats. So let's format that and go to number. And there we go. And why is that? Oh, you know what we forgot to do? I forgot to filter you all. So let's, all right, we were supposed to filter for our colons, but I forgot. But this is good. It can model for you paying attention to why you get weird data. Okay, so what I'm going to do real quick is I'm actually going to choose, I don't know if I have to do this, but just to put it back in the format that you had. I'm just going to choose these and delete. I don't think it's the biggest deal, but I just want it to look like you all. Okay, and let me just, so this is why it's really important that even if you think you know what you're doing, that you want to follow the instructions, because you will likely miss something that the instructions told you to do. Okay, so all of our colon data is now in fraction form. All right, so now we're gonna remove our filter by selecting all and bring back those single numbers. And now we're gonna sort all of our data. Do advanced, and data has header row. And we are gonna sort by E, their choice, just to make sure we're keeping that organized. And then also by their wake time. So F. Okay. Actually, I guess we didn't have to sort by the choice because now it's going to make us do this twice, but that's okay. I just really want to keep those separate. So, so for the freeze, you're just going to copy the single number and paste that in. And then for the obligation, do the same. If we hadn't sorted by this, actually, yeah, we would just have to do this once. So maybe that's more efficient, but you can do that on the next round if you feel confident. Okay. And we are going to call this column Monday Wake Trans for transformed. We are going to format it so that it is all numbers. And we're going to keep the Monday Wake column again, just so we can see that. So we're going to call that now Monday Wake Time, just again, so it's easier to go back and be like, oh, it's 4:45. Okay, and let's freeze that column just in case. So we can copy column G, paste special, and do values only. And so now there should be all values. Okay. All right, so now we have our fraction of our sleep time and we have our fraction of our wake time. So now we want to calculate the difference between people's sleep and midnight, right? So remember, we have to find the difference between when they went to sleep and when they woke up. And that's really hard to do because they cross midnight, and at midnight, it resets the clock. And so it makes it really difficult to find the difference. So what we're going to do is we're just going to calculate the sleep time to midnight, and then we're going to calculate the difference between midnight to the wake time, and then we can calculate the difference between those to find the difference between their sleep and their wake time. So in column I, let me fix that on my sheet here so that I don't confuse you. We are going to call this column sleep to midnight. Okay. So we have to do this separately for if they went to sleep in the AM or in the PM because the formula is different. So you're going to filter, we're back to sleep. So we're going to filter column D. for the AM values. So for 1, so we're only seeing our AM values here. And now we also have to change anything that has a 12. So 12 is midnight. We're going to change anything that has a 12 to a 0, right? To start it. Because basically, if you're calculating the difference between sleep and midnight, and they went to bed at midnight, then the difference between those is 0. So we need to calculate this with our formula. So we are going to highlight column C. We're going to do find and replace by doing, I'm on a Mac. So however you do, like your control or whatever, find. So do find. And I'm going to say anything that starts with a 12. And so it's going to highlight everything, which again, you don't want to change all the 12s to 0. So when you go to this more options, right, you'll say find, replace with a 0. And then instead of doing all sheets, you want to do a specific range because you only want to do column C. And in that range, it's going to let you click and to define your range, right? Select your range, and it's everything that is in column C. That's what we want to change to a 0 if it's a 12. You say okay, and then you say replace all, and it says I did that for 78 values here. So there's a lot of 12s in our data, which makes sense. A lot of people going to bed at midnight and a couple at noon. Okay. So once we have done that, then in column I, we want to just do equals sum, and the formula is 0 minus column C. So the first value is C5. And do that. And you just want to check to say, does that make sense, right? So they went to sleep at 1 a.m. And so, yeah, the difference between, midnight and 1 a.m. is a -1. So that makes sense. And in fact, because you have filtered for 1, everybody went to sleep in the a.m. after midnight. So I think all of these should be negative. And it looks like they are. And I would just, again, format this to make sure by number and 2 decimals, just so everything, just to make sure if there are decimals that we're getting. Okay, so now we want to filter column D for PM. And do the same thing. And just make sure we're getting all PMs. Yep. And now the formula is oh, I think we need to also change this to 0, the 12 to 0. Hold on, let me think about this logically. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I was just doing the math in my head. It's interesting. I have a hard time thinking when people are like around me and staring at me. And apparently I have a hard time thinking when I know people are watching the video in which I'm doing this. So, all right. But I don't think we have any 12s in here, but let's just go through the process. So this would be in column C. So we want to find any 12s. We would replace with 0. Again, only in that range, not in the entire data file. And pick your range. And say replace all. Oh, there were. Oh, it was 1. See, we missed 1. I thought there weren't, and there was 1. So, all right. And now the formula for sleep to midnight is equals sum, and now it's 12 minus the first value here, which is C2. And that will calculate that difference. Okay. And again, just check, right? So they went to bed at 11:45, which is 11.75. So that means there's only, 0.25 minutes until midnight. Okay. And again, format just to make sure that your numbers are just 2 decimal places. Okay, now we want to calculate the difference between midnight to wake. And so I have named column J midnight to wake. And so now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to highlight or filter H. I sorted, guys. I sorted. Wait. Did I? Or did I filter? I don't know what I did. Oh, this is always worse. Okay. That looks good. Okay. I don't know what I did, but that was really scary. Okay. I'm going to filter column H for 1. Yeah, I think I did this. It's not good. And I'm going to say, okay, so now I only have 1s here. Okay. And again, let me think out, if we had noons, would we need to do that? I'm not sure we do, but if we had somebody who woke up at noon, so midnight to noon would be 12. No, I don't think we need to change this to 0. Okay, because so the formula here is equals their wake time. Oh, sorry, 0, right? So midnight plus their wake time. And if they woke up at noon, then 0 plus noon would be 12. So we don't have to change that to 0. Okay, and again, just check to say, midnight to waking up at 5 a.m. is 5. So that one should be fairly straightforward to understand conceptually. And then we are going to filter H. For PMs. And now I think we do have to, because this formula is going to be 12 plus whatever is in here. So if they woke at noon, then, oh, that's why it wasn't in the AM. Duh. If they woke at noon, then they would. Okay. So in the previous one, we may need to change the 12s to 0s because the 12 mean that they woke up at midnight, which is probably going to be super rare. I don't think that's going to happen, but let me add that to here. To my notes. I don't think we're going to see that, which is why I got kind of confused with that. But I think it's possible. So we'll just check to make sure. Okay, so we're going to do find 12 and replace with 0 just for that range. Here, we're going to replace all. I didn't do that right because I did it in F. Now it's back. So we're going to undo that again. We're going to try it again. We're going to find 12. We are going to replace with 0 just for this range. And we are going to choose all of G. That's what I didn't do before. And we're going to replace all and replace 6 values. And we're going to say we're done. Okay. And the formula here is equals 12 plus the value in G, 0, and it will autofill. So if they woke at noon, that's midnight to noon, that's 12 hours minus the 3 hours, minus the negative 3 hours. Okay, so that makes sense. All right. Okay. And these people, I'm just noticing, just because it's like oh, so these super high values, right, should be like, why is that high? But then this is negative. So it just means that they're like, there's a lot of time between midnight and when they woke up because they went to bed so long after midnight, right? So just, again, always be looking at your data and just ask, does that make sense? And if it does make sense, then you're good. All right, we're so close. So now we are going to remove our filter by selecting all. Now we are going to find the midpoint, right? So remember, we want to find basically the difference between their sleep and their wake, but we want to divide that by 2. So we could do that in 2 separate columns, like conceptually, if you wanted. We could do, the difference between these 2 columns, and then in a separate column, divide them by 2. But I'm just going to do them in one column. Call it midpoint. And so the formula is equals sum, and it's going to be, I guess, the difference between their sleep. Oh, no, wait. Is it the sum or is it the difference? It's the sum. Sorry, I apologize. We're going to add these together, right? Because it's sleep to midnight and then midnight to wake. So we're going to add those together and then close the parentheses, and then we're going to divide that by 2. And let's autofill. And again, just format that to all just decimal places, and just make sure that that makes sense, right? So if this person basically slept for 5 hours, right? They slept for a quarter of an hour before midnight, and they slept for 4 3/4 after midnight. So they slept for 5 hours divided by 2. Their midpoint is 2.5. And so just, take a minute just to go through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So that is 9 hours divided, or 8.5. Okay. And then the very last thing is what they want. They don't just want the midpoint, right? They want like the midpoint. This is the value of just like how many hours is the midpoint. They want, we need basically what time of night is the midpoint, or what time of day is the midpoint. So to do that, the final calculation, actually I'm going to call this difference, I'll call this last one midpoint, is to say, let's take the sleep hour, right, the sleep time. So the sleep time is all the way back here in column C, so 11.75, and let's add 2.5 hours, because that's the difference, right, between the sleep and the wake divided by 2. And so it's going to autofill. And so this is going to look kind of weird because it's putting it into, right, just numbers. So we have to sort of think like military time, except we're not. We have to think about 0, right, like what midnight is, right? So instead of, if you're thinking about military time, instead of crossing noon and continuing to go to 1314, think about crossing midnight and continuing to go to 1314, right? Because we want, it's like if they slept, if they went to bed at 11:45, then their midpoint is going to be, so midnight, and then 1 is 13, and then 2 is 14. So this would be 2:15 in the morning, right? That's going to be their midpoint. So we will consider all of these values, right? This is 4 in the morning. I think that works. Let's go back and check that logic. But I'm pretty sure that that's how those values work. And let's check. So this is a low value. So they went to bed at 1 a.m. and their midpoint. So this is 4 a.m. So basically everything is a.m. and the ones that are in the teens just have to be translated back, like conceptually back into 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., etc. We're not going to change them back into time quite yet. We will later, but because what the next step is we are going to put, right, this is, we now have like participants 3 Monday, which is a free day, right? So every participant is going to have all of their Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Some will be free, some will be obligation. We will compute the average difference of these. And to do that, we still want to keep it in the fraction. So for now, we're going to keep it like this. And in fact, we can talk about this later. I think this is a good point to stop at. We may go back and just change all of these, right? Like find 14 and change it to 2. Find 12 and change it to 0, right? Just so everybody is on the same scale. That's probably what we're going to need to do. But I would say let's do that when we get all of these data calculated. So for now, I think we are good. I think we have got the data. If you can get it in this form, then I think we are good to go and we can move on from there.